Welcome to the DIY3DTech.com channel.
Welcome to this issue of DIY3DTech.com. This issue or episode, we're coming back to talk about the TwoUp printer we've been working on for a while. You might remember a while back we talked about adding a Bowden extruder to the mix and developing this whole thing and converting it over to use a Bowden type extruder rather than a direct. And so far this has sort of worked out okay. Haven't done a lot of prints. I actually just started some of the test prints, had time to get back around. And this is sort of what I want to take some time and talk about. So what some of the challenges are that we've faced with this and etc. Hopefully to help you, the viewers, get some better productivity out of your TwoUp printer. So let's start with a couple of the challenges first, and then we'll move on to talk more about the extrusion process, which is really the main focus. One of the first things we had as I started, over here we have the pulley for the X gantry. One of the big challenges I had, this kept coming loose no matter how much I tightened the hex screws. This always just seemed to come loose and ruin whatever I was doing every single time. So I had to go actually a little bit paleo on this and basically JB Weld the pulley to the shaft. So there was just no other way about it. I don't care if I sanded it, if I tightened it, I did this, I did that. It just kept slipping on the shaft and just ruining the print. So since I've JB Welded it, the problem has gone away. I can also still remove it, put it back on. The pulley will fit through here, so not a problem. And you know, the fact it's a $14–15 stepper motor is no big issue. So gluing it on, not a big deal. So I did end up also changing the pulley over here. So from, I think, I can't remember what size it was, 3/8 bolt. I switched it to a 1/4 inch and did some spacers. I think I covered it also on a blog post, and the spacers were out there on Thingiverse because, as you recall, as having a belt tensioning issue was just simply too tight, and it was torquing on the motor over here too much, and so this solved the problem and actually, you know, created a whole lot better pulley. Still, part of the problem I have is with the belt in this gantry still pushing out a little bit too far because this is kind of tight. I am going to probably have to take this out and adjust it up. You can probably see it twisted here a little bit. That's a little bit of a challenge. The other thing is also make sure that your belt is aligned so that this pulley, especially before you glue it, matches up with the relief of this pulley, so this is running in a straight line, this belt. So again, that's very important because one of the pieces, this had actually ratcheted back and was pulling at a bit of an angle. So now with all that corrected, life is a lot better. The other piece, big piece, is the bed itself. So as you can see here, I have a piece of glass on the bed because the melamine bed is or was warped in that. In fact, it actually bowed a couple thousandths of an inch in the middle piece here as we went through here. So what would happen is I'd have it aligned up here, then basically the head would run into the bed up here, and then it would drop off as it went to the back, and it was just not a good thing. So as you see, I've just took a piece of, and you have to be kind of careful about it because this is just from a picture frame. I'm actually going to go to Hobby Lobby and have a piece cut of thicker glass that matches the bed size. That'll be inside, you know, these hex screws, you know, on the inside both ways, and fit in there so it'll work. I'll probably get a couple of them just in case I break one, because the one thing you have to watch, if you run this head into this glass bed, it will break the bed, and this again is not tempered glass or anything, it will shatter. So it would be good to get some, you know, get a glass like Pyrex or something that's not going to quite shatter like plate glass will. And again, I've got the tape on it. So, but this has actually worked out pretty good. Now, for the main, I think, piece here is if you remember when I talked earlier and I introduced the Bowden extruder concept a while back in the video, I mentioned that actually, and I'll pan up a little bit, so sorry about the camera bounciness, it is the actual extruder unit that I mounted in up here. the cog is actually a little bit smaller. It's actually 1/2 millimeter smaller. Now, mathematically, that works out to be about 0.495% or something like that difference. So I've been playing around and adjusting the throughput. One of the other things that I'll mention is I added this thumb screw with this little bit with this number 4 screw sticking out. I'm going to come up with something a little bit better than this, but one of the things I really wanted to see was this turning and how much it turned. And actually I'm thinking about putting some kind of calibrated wheel to measure the turning, although technically I guess you could kind of see the extrusion amounts on there, because what I found too, if I adjust the bed, if I adjust the print head down too low, this actually slips. So I could actually see the slipping, because one of the things I am going to do in a future video is kind of do a setup on how to make this all work, because this is the other piece that I'm really was grappling with and still haven't got down to 100%, but I'm getting a little bit better. Because you know, setting the height from the bed has been pretty difficult. One of the things, if you notice, and I talked about this before in the other video, I've got an opening over here for a servo. So I've got the servo on order, and I'm going to do auto bed leveling. I'll spit it out on this too. So I've got the servo coming. I've got the micro switches wired in. I'll have to upgrade the Marlin firmware. I've been looking at a couple different sites to see how to do it, but I think that's something else that will help a lot in the builds is having that auto bed leveling. So we're going to add this feature to the printer, so watch for forthcoming episodes. I haven't had a lot of problem with the Z-axis. This does jump a little bit, and I'm sure if I did some really tall linear parts, like, you know, printing a piece of linear rail that goes vertical, I'd probably run into some problems. But for the smaller stuff that I've been experimenting with, has not been an issue. I'm going to probably do some spring tensioning, and I'm going to probably do another Z-axis motor over here. So I have 2 Z-axis motors, which you typically have, because one of the things I am probably going to, in the near future, ditch this mechanism and go with an OrdBot type mounting mechanism. I'll use all the same stuff, just with the OrdBot maker rails and configuration, and it all basically works the same. I'll use the same motors, electronics, and, you know, even the same basic stage and everything. But again, I think that's what I'm going to do in the future and go with that, rather than just, you know, put the other Melmine piece over here you can get from TwoUp. But I mean, just for a printer kit, it hasn't been bad. Now, but I do want to go back again. I've kind of gotten off track a little bit with that cog. That's the cog up there that I was showing before. That's a 1/2 millimeter difference. There's a couple ways to adjust it, as I've been looking at, and one is in the Marlin firmware, and I don't want to quite change that yet. So what I've been experimenting with it is actually in G-code, and here's a couple examples. So this was one of my first successful prints with the printer. Came out actually not too bad. This is for a laser cutter that I'm building for the end stops switches. Actually came out pretty good, but there are some gaps in it where it was not, and I'm not sure if this it will come out in the picture. I don't know if you can kind of see some of the yeah, you can see them kind of, they're a little bit blurry, but where it really didn't fill in, it wasn't getting enough plastic, because it's just a little bit short on plastic at 100%. Now this other piece, which is still stuck to the bed, which I printed, you notice that there's some blobbing out here. So now I've set this to 110%, and so instead of 105. I sort of did this because I intentionally wanted to see if the part would fail at this number, and it really sort of did, just because of the blobs. It pushed out too much plastic, you know, especially, and you can see, you kind of feel the ridges where it pressed down on it. So I know if I go back to probably about 104, I don't know if I can set partial numbers like 104.5 or something, but I'm going to drop it back to 104 and see if that fixes it. And I think that probably will in code fix it. And then because when I get into the Marlin firmware to do the servo bed leveling upgrade, then I'll probably adjust it as an absolute inside the firmware, the number of revolutions the extruder up there makes, and increase that by about 4% or so. But I guess part of my other point too with this is I figure out what the percentage and get a good print with the percentage on the part here in G-code. I will know that that will work when I make the changes to the extruder up there in the Marlin firmware. Yeah, I know that was sort of kind of some rambling, but hopefully that made some sense, because this has been an interesting process. But the glass bed made a huge difference. I've got it level, so it's been very easy to get reasonable parts. One of the big challenges, and once I actually completely figure it out, is how far to start the head from the base has been a big one. So, you know, it seems like if I basically started out right on the base, it works better than if I started up like 2/1000ths of an inch or something like that. So anyways, I'm still kind of sorting that out with the various pieces, because you can kind of, I got this other kind of messed up one down here that didn't come out too well. That was also an experiment. But all in all, it's getting there. So anyways, hopefully this video helped you out. If you have a TwoUp and you're trying to get it working, or you're thinking about converting it to a Bowden extruder,